evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, February 16th, 2017 School Board meeting of South Washington County Schools. We are meeting at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, and our start time is 6:30. The first order of business is the roll call. Dana?
Joe Slavin.
Here.
Michelle Whitty.
Here.
Sharon Van Leer.
Here.
Tracy Burnett is absent. Katie Schwartz.
Here.
Ron Kath.
Here.
Katie McAway-Stevens.
Here.
Melody Armstrong. Here. Needy Jerrywalla. Here. Hayden Schultz is absent.
If you'd please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda item 3.0 is approval of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the format of this evening's agenda.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Sharon Van Leer, second by Ron Kath. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes. Agenda item 4.0 are district highlights. And 4.1 is the Park High School STEP team. And they will be introduced by Lynn Deiman, Office Coordinator over at Park High School.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairperson McAlway-Stevens, Superintendent Jacobus, and all school board members. My name is Lynn Deiman. I am the Office Coordinator at Park High School and happy to be the advisor for the Park High School Wolf Riders STEP team. The team is coached by Sean Burns, and we are well supported by the Park High School administration, staff, and students, Kristine Schaeffer and the Office of Educational Equity and Integration, as well as Equity Alliance Minnesota. In celebration of Black History Month, it is a great honor to introduce to you the Park High School STEP team. At this time, Jada. Jada again. Kiki, Cecilia, Liz, Janie, Erica, Chandra, Elena, Wendy, and Penelope. Thank you very much.
Working conditions and blisters. We were beaten and belittled, but we will never be broken.
Instruments. We created a series of beats using our hands, feet, thighs, and chest.
Step kept us from giving up. Step kept us from losing hope. No matter what, we will never give up. And we will never be broken.
We came to step. As you can see,
was amazing. It's too bad they left. Wanted to ask them how long it took them to. Do you know, Kristine, how long it takes them to get that all down and how many hours they practice and how many days a week?
I do not know how long, but I've seen them do it multiple times, and they're awesome every time I do it, and they love it, and they have a lot of fun.
They are very awesome. Thank you. All right, 4.2, the Culture and Climate Ambassador recognition by Kristine Schaeffer, and she is our Educational Equity and Integration Coordinator.
All right. Good evening, Board Chair McAway-Stevens, Dr. Jacobus, school board members, and students. I'm here tonight to introduce and congratulate our Culture and Climate Ambassadors for the month of February. These individuals were selected by their peers as someone who goes above and beyond their job to promote a positive culture and climate in District 833. Sharon, if you could come on down and help me congratulate them. So if you are here, Denise Coquette, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Jamie Kirshner, and Juanita Dean. Come on up.
Okay, we'll start with Denise. Denise is a second grade teacher at Gray Cloud Elementary. Denise monitors data to guide her instructions, serves on the Student Improvement Plan Committee, and as a data and assessment teacher leader. She is described as approachable, yes, and an effective communicator. She also does a great job appreciating the diversity of her students and personalizing learning for all. Fellow staff members say she contributes a great deal to the positive culture and climate of District 833. Next we have Jamie Kirshner. Jamie Kirshner is a science teacher at Oatman Middle School. She takes on any situation she's faced with and tries to make it positive. Jamie continuously acknowledges the fact that every student has the potential to be successful and does her absolute best to make sure that happens. Both students and staff known that they can go to Jamie at any time with anything, and she will be there to help them, encourage them, and brighten their day. She is described as the epitome of a lifelong learner. Congratulations. Okay. Our last, but not least, Juanita Dean. Juanita Dean serves as a custodian at East Ridge High School and is said to continuously bring a smile to everyone she interacts with. She goes out of her way to get to know others at East Ridge, making it a priority to build relationships and connections. She is dedicated to her job, has a positive attitude, and takes great pride in the work she does. Fellow East Ridge staff members say she makes them better just by having the chance to work with her each day. Congratulations.
All right, thank you, and congratulations. We appreciate everything you guys do here in District 833. Agenda item 4.3 is the 27 Woodbury Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year, Lisa Hyland, and she will be introduced by Sarah Sorenson-Wagner, our principal at Woodbury High School,
Good
who
evening.
also modeled.
Thank you, Chair McAway-Stevens. Good evening, Dr. Jacobus, Chair McAway-Stevens, School Board. I'm the principal of Woodbury High School, and I am honored to introduce Lisa Hyland as the Woodbury Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year. Lisa is Woodbury High School Student Achievement Specialist and AVID Program Coordinator. You will hear from her shortly during our presentation, but it will be evident she is passionate about college and career readiness, as well as supporting the success of all students in our school. In addition to making a difference with the students, Lisa is also dedicated to making a difference with our parents. Last year, Lisa developed a 6-week Royal Parent Academy designed to help parents learn more about supporting students to successfully navigate high school and access post-secondary options. Her success with peers, students, and families is due to her drive as an educator, teamed with being an effective communicator with a warm and friendly personality. We are proud to claim Lisa as a teacher at Woodbury High School, and thank you for helping us celebrate her recognition. Congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you, and thank you, Sarah, for claiming me. It's been an honor and fun to receive this Chamber of Commerce Award, and it's an honor to be a Royal. I'm blessed to work with amazing, committed teachers and administrators who encourage one another to try new things and then provide support as we tackle new challenges. Stretching ourselves to learn from each other, our students, and our parents makes us all better teachers and better people, and I'm thankful to be a part of that. So I appreciate your kind recognition tonight. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations, Lisa. And that concludes agenda item 4.0. Moving on to 5.0 is public comment. At this time, individuals may speak to the school board on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Specific complaints identifying staff, students, or task force members will not be permitted. The board will not respond to or discuss your comments. The superintendent may be asked to prepare a response to your concerns. Our policy allows 3 minutes per person, and so far I have one request, and it is by Doreen Holmes Shreetza. You may come on up.
Where am I?
Right over here.
Thank you. I've not been to a school board meeting before, so I'm new to this. And I'm coming tonight to address my really big concern about students in District 834 that are currently attending Valley Crossing. And my daughter is in first grade there now, and that's our neighborhood school. And now next year she's expected to go to Brookview when that school opens. And my passion for doing what is right for my daughter and for the other kids that I know that are in that same situation is what made me come here tonight. I have never been to a school board meeting. I have never spoken to a group of people like this, but I have to do something because my daughter is happy at Valley Crossing. She's thriving at Valley Crossing. And when I told her of the possibility that she couldn't go to Valley Crossing this fall, she started crying immediately. And what am I gonna do? I won't see the ladies in the office anymore. I won't see my teachers. I won't see my friends. And 2 of the teachers live on our street. And she's been planning since the first day of kindergarten to go to Mrs. May's class next year in 2nd grade. And she's devastated that even there's a possibility that she might not be able to go there because that's what she knows is her school. So I just wanted to mention that this is really hard on the families in District 834, and I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like we've sort of been left out of the whole decision-making process. I feel like our concerns haven't been addressed, and I feel like these kids are just sort of being dropped off, and they're supposed to go to a school next year that isn't even ready. We don't know who the teachers are. We don't know how it's going to be managed. We don't know what the building looks like until August, and these kids are supposed to go there a couple weeks after the building is supposed to be finished. That's really unfair to expect of a 6-year-old to do and to accept and to deal with. And I just wanted to voice my concerns about that and how important it is to the families that are in this situation. And I know that there are families that want to go to Brookview that are at Valley Crossing and they can't because there's no space. I can't have my kid go to Valley Crossing because there's no space, but she's supposed to be at Brookview. How does that make any sense? Why can't we swap those spots out? I'll give up my spot at Brookview and I'll take somebody else's at Valley Crossing. Seems simple to me. So I just wanted to voice those concerns and put it in people's ears that we really are deeply concerned about it. And I don't feel like my daughter's needs are going to be met at Brookview as opposed to Valley Crossing, because Valley Crossing is set up in a way to accommodate abilities of all different ranges. Just the way that they have the multi-age classrooms, and she's got 3 teachers to rely on instead of 1 in her classroom. And they can accommodate a wide range of abilities, whether it's lower or higher. And I am really concerned that she is not going to be accommodated in a school that is a traditional setting. And I feel like I'm stuck. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, we have Amy, is it Anderson? Oh, all right.
Good evening. Good evening, I'm Amy Anderson. I'm actually also from District 834. I have 3 students that currently attend Valley Crossing right now. I have them as an alternate school choice as a member of the 834 school district. Recently, we have received a letter that has denied them their open enrollment to Valley Crossing for next year for all 3 students, which got me to thinking, back in 2015, I had started a process in which I wanted to open enroll my students into District 834, or I'm sorry, into District 833. And so the summer of 2015, I sent in, or I forget the exact time, but I sent in my open enrollment forms for 2016-2017 school year, this exact one. At which time I got a call from the office in which said, you don't need to do that because we have a tuition agreement. And I said, that's okay, but I'm not part of the Brookview school group that would go there. I'm from a different school. I'd like to open enroll. At which time, again, my open enrollment form was dismissed because I was from 834. I've since learned I don't think you can screen whose open enrollment forms can be reviewed based off of their district. So I just wanted to have that noted, that I did not get my open enrollment forms reviewed for the 2016-2017 school year. In addition to that, though, I did fill out my open enrollment forms for the 2017-2018 school year, in which we were denied. And I think the letter that I received on November 29th, I just wanted to read a part of it to you. As a current Valley Crossing family, we are reaching out to confirm your home is within the boundaries of School District 834. Currently, South Washington Schools has a tuition agreement for your student with the Stillwater area schools. And I would just like to see the presentation of that tuition agreement. I have yet been able to find that either within 834 or within 833, as it is stated in this letter. I did receive 3 copies of this letter, one for each one of my students. And then I did receive the denial for open enrollment. It was only addressed to 2 of my students, and I assume the other letter was from my 3rd student. So again, am I able to see this tuition agreement this evening?
As far as the amount, are you?
No, just the tuition agreement.
That's, our finance people work through that. I don't have that document with me. But what it was, because this year there was a transition year, and 834 expected all of their families to come back to their district and go to their new school. We didn't open enroll people because there's a law about open enrollment about once you are open enrolled, then you have a right to stay through graduation. So we were looking for a 1-year situation to transition this year as we went through. So we looked at the what the cost per pupil that we receive from the state, and that's the agreement for that amount.
So there is no documented tuition agreement?
Well, there's documented. Yes, I don't have that document with me.
So the agreement is financial and not understanding? Because
Again, I, as a board member, I just want to remind everybody that the intent of open comment is just to bring your voice forward, but then administration can certainly, we have your name and address. I would recommend that our administrators work with you one-on-one at that point so that we can solve this issue. Because not only you and the other parent, we've also been getting emails. So this is certainly something that our administration can certainly reach out and communicate and take care of it for you.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
do I need to leave my name or something? I'm not. Thank you.
Is it got, I would recommend that if we could get your phone number so we could contact you that way then. If you want to, I would just pass that down, and if you could, and then we could leave it with Barb.
Certainly.
In the
I'm
back,
not
you'll have
available for phone. Can I leave my email?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to the board this evening? Okay. So that ends our public comment. The next item on our agenda is 6.0, the consent agenda. All consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Prior to this meeting, board members have had the opportunity to review each of these items and may request that any item be removed to the action items for individual consideration. That has not occurred this evening, so I will entertain a motion for approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Sharon Van Leer, seconded by Ron Kath. Before I call for the vote, I would like to point out consent agenda item 6.6, which is the resolution to accept gifts to District 833. And I would just like to mention that during the month of January, a total amount of $42,856 was given to our school district, and that brings the total for the school year 2016-2017 to $200,208. We would like to thank every donor and let you know we appreciate your partnering with us. With that, I will take a call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you. 7.0 workshop items, and this agenda item is scheduled for March 2nd, 2017. 8.0 are informational items. 8.1 is culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, and that will be presented this evening by Julie Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening, Board Chair McElway-Stevens, board members, Dr. Jacobus, and student representatives. This evening, Woodbury High School is here to share some of the work they are doing to strengthen school climate and culture and support academic achievements at the school. I had the opportunity a few weeks back to watch a staff meeting where they were engaged in a book study, and it was so fun and interesting to watch a group of high school teachers standing up, sharing strategies, laughing, and it was just a great interactive activity as they reviewed this book. In the school, there has been a strong focus on professional development, increasing the use of student engagement strategies in the classrooms, and expanding support programs for students. This evening, Principal Sarah Sorenson-Wagner will be highlighting the work being done at Woodbury High School, and teachers will be able to share specific examples from their classrooms. So please welcome Woodbury High School.
Thank you. Good evening again, Chair McElway-Stevens, Dr. Jacobus, school board reps, and school board members. We are very excited to share with you some of the awesome things that I believe that we're doing at Woodbury High School in regards to culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, one of our initiatives in our district. I know you know that about our strategic plan, and hope to bring it home to you that there is application in a classroom setting and at the school setting, so you can learn more about what teachers are doing. A quick slide before our teachers start to speak in terms of why our district and our school is on the journey to responsiveness. 3 items that we hear from Dr. Shiraki Holly, who has been doing staff professional development, is our goals to increase student engagement, reduce inequities across all of our student demographic groups, and also love our students more. So as you listen to our teachers, if you could keep an ear open for those 3 things as we show you what we're specifically trying to do to increase student engagement, meet the needs of all of our students, and love them for who they are and welcome them into our school. So we are going to get started with Lisa Hyland.
All right, we had several people from our building attend a Leadership for College Readiness workshop a little over 3 years ago. We were given a needs assessment rubric, and it was a tool that helped us assess how we were doing in several areas, all centered around 4 pillars of leadership, instruction, systems, and culture. We began to take a careful look at how we could improve the culture and climate of Woodbury High School through school government structures, professional development, and our outreach to parents. We'd like to share some of those steps we've taken in the last couple of years as a result. In 2014-15, we established a Culture and Climate Committee as well as a Professional Development Committee. We attended a Parent Involvement for Quality Education, or PK, training and began thinking about ways to reach out to our parents more intentionally. By 2015-16, we had 24 of our teachers trained in the culturally relevant teaching AVID strand. And as a direct result of that CRT training, in the spring of 2016, we invited a diverse student group and a diverse parent group to be a part of a panel discussion. Our goal was to learn what their experience have been as a part of our community and what issues they see that still need to be addressed. Based on our conversations at the PK training, we also launched our Royal Parent Academy. Participants in our Royal Parent Academy commit to a 6-week session and spend 2 hours per class with us. Our goal is to welcome the parents into our school community and to empower them with information to help their students successfully navigate high school and prepare for college. This year, we've taken steps to implement what we learned from our student and parent panels. We heard clearly from our students that connections with teachers are key and that students want to know their teachers more. In an effort to build connections, this past fall, we all created door signs so that students are able to see parts of our lives we may not typically share in the classroom, such as families, hobbies, and our favorite things. We also started out our school year with a privilege walk as an activity to better understand some of the advantages and disadvantages that impact our experiences as well as those of our students. We've all taken the time to assess our own classrooms for cultural responsiveness, and we're reading the Shiraki Holly book together and discussing it monthly in our faculty meetings. One of our faculty meetings recently shared with me that the most valuable thing she sees in our work to be more culturally responsive is that we're now talking about it. We're becoming more aware. And part of that awareness is knowing that we have work to do. And part of the joy of that awareness is that we are working on efforts with such significance. So we would like to share some of those examples with you tonight.
All right, thank you. My name is Erica Youngworth, and I'm an English teacher. I teach a CIS writing class, and I teach English 10. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how we made changes this year to the English 10 curriculum. We've been teaching a book called A Small Place. It's about a Caribbean island. It's a post-colonial kind of look at how that island was affected. And we've been teaching that for several years, and generally the students are not very receptive to it. They tend to think that she is mean and angry, and they don't understand why. And I created this lovely slide at one point to try to help them think beyond black and white. Kind of the one graphic is you see the guy playing the saxophone, you see the woman's face, but in order to see one, you have to ignore the other. And so when we have like those two sides and we try to polarize things, we miss a lot. And so I talk about complexity and shades of gray, and that's why the M.C. Escher right stairways go up and down, and it's very complex. And I try to tell them this, and that's not effective either. So what I learned from Shiraki Holly then was it's not enough just to incorporate these things into our curriculum. We also have to teach students how to navigate that. We have to give them opportunities to practice, and we have to provide greater collaboration. So with that in mind, we swapped out some of the things that led up to that book, and we also tried to incorporate more collaborative, interactive pieces. So instead of teaching Fahrenheit 451, which we were having trouble getting copies for anyhow, we taught Raisin in the Sun. And so then that was an integration piece, and we did small group Socratic seminars, so each group had a different focus. They focused on a variety of issues, and they did outside research, and they got to talk to one another. We added a contemporary connection then with that, where they got to listen to a podcast about integration in 2013, and they did a compare-contrast over time, and they did a whole class one. So that was a Socratic seminar, is their chance to discuss without my kind of telling them what to think. It's their own ideas, their own interactions with their peers, so it's authentic. And so that kind of led us up into things that we'd already been teaching. The Matthew Effect, Malcolm Gladwell, became much more relevant then to them. They were able to see a cumulative advantage and privilege. And so then we did, based on what they'd had, a privilege walk. And so we provided that. And so the takeaway from all of this was, once we actually got to reading A Small Place, this year it was reversed. This year, the students, even though they still thought she was mean and angry, they could see why, and they could see where she was coming from, and so they could appreciate it, even if they didn't always enjoy it, I think. And it was a very visual. They stood on opposite sides of the room, and I could see that they had all shifted, and so it was very successful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andy Plachuk. I teach geometry at Woodbury High School. One of the things that we do in my class to increase engagement and build relationships with students is we play a lot of games. So if I want my students to practice the math skills they've been learning, instead of saying, okay, do these 25 problems out of the book or do this worksheet, a lot of times we will have them log on to iPads or their phones, and we play games like I have highlighted: quizzes, Quizlet, Socrative, Kahoot. I like doing these because it gives the students instant feedback, and it gives me instant feedback so that they can see if they're learning what they're supposed to be learning, and I can see that as well. The other thing I like about this is I can add non-math questions. So I add pop culture questions or questions that feature the students' interest in them. So kids that aren't math geeks like me can still be engaged. If they know every couple math questions they do, they're gonna get a fun one. So as I said, I like to put in questions that for the students' interests. So like last week we were doing a quizzes, and I have a girl in class who loves the show Supernatural. So I put a question in there about Supernatural, and I could just tell when she got to that question, her face lit up, and it just made her day that she had the question in there. So just those little things in there to have the kids see that they're important and that we pay attention to them. They're more than just a test score or a name on the roster, that we really pay attention and see them as people and know that they have interests. So I took a little video of my kids playing one of my favorite ones. There we go. So this is quizzes, and I like this one because it really can be customized. I teach team geometry, so one of the things I like about this is the kids work at their own pace, so they don't get penalized if they process a little bit slower than the other kids, but they can still be successful at it. And because they're working at their own pace, they can take it again once they're done and keep trying until they get them right. Kind of one of the fun parts of this one too is you'll see as the kids are answering, meme will pop up if they get it right or not. So it makes it a little bit more fun and interesting, and I can even customize those. So there's ones where I've made ones with my face, and it kind of freaks the kids out, but they still have fun with it. So just makes it a little bit more fun than doing just the problems out of the book all the time. So
you want to watch the rest of it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So there's what I put in a question about the Dallas Cowboys, because I have some kids that really like the Dallas Cowboys. So just something to make them feel important and make math not so boring. So.
Good evening. My name is Julie Onken. I'm an avid elective teacher at Woodbury High School. The strategy I'm going to share with you guys tonight is very basic, yet critically important when building relationships with students. It's knowing student names and being able to pronounce them correctly. Being able to identify students by name communicates that they matter and builds a sense of community in the classroom. As an avid teacher, I have the honor and privilege of getting to know students over several years as they progress through the AVID program. However, last year I had an embarrassing moment when I was preparing for the AVID Senior Recognition Dinner. I had to ask one of my AVID seniors, someone that I've known and worked closely with for the past 3 years, how to correctly pronounce his last name. Since I had a good relationship with him, he graciously laughed and tried to make me feel better by saying, "Nobody knows how to say my name." But I'm like, that really bothered me. Building relationships with students is something that I value as a teacher and have made a priority to really know my students as individuals. This incident showed me that I needed to step up my game, and I needed to get to know both the students' first and last names. Last year, I had the opportunity to attend 2 culturally relevant teaching strands. Since I've been with the AVID program for the past 6 years, I've been to several AVID trainings, and all AVID trainings begin with participants creating a name tent. But one of the key takeaways that I had from last year's Empowering Students strand was having students create name tents with their preferred first and last names, including phonetic spelling on the very first day of school. The facilitator stressed the importance of having students share their preferred names, since sometimes their names that are in the air quotes system are not the names that they identify with or choose to identify with. I used this strategy this fall and made it a personal goal to know all students by their first and last name by the end of the second day of school. It seems like such a no-brainer activity, but it was so helpful to have the phonetic spelling so I could practice saying their names correctly as I study them at home at night. And I'm happy to say I met my goal, and I did learn all of their names by the second day. I practiced a lot, or so I thought. Just as I was starting to feel pretty good about myself, I just had another experience just 2 weeks ago with one of my AVID 10 students that made me rethink what I'm doing in the classroom to build cultural connections. During work time, I asked a student to come up to my desk so I could get her email address for an after-school activity we were planning. As I listened to her give me her username, I paused for a moment. I was confused. I didn't recognize the name she pronounced. I felt terrible. I realized I'd been saying her name wrong the past year and a half. Again, she laughed and tried to make me feel better and said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Onken, nobody says it right. It's just easier for people to say tope." I immediately said, "Well, I want to say it correctly." The student explained that she's Nigerian, and to say it correctly in Yoruba, it could be difficult to pronounce for most Americans. So I practiced saying it several times, and every time she kept encouraging me, "Keep trying, Mrs. Onken, you're getting closer." I knew I was not doing her name the justice it deserved, so I asked if I could record her saying her own name so I could keep practicing. She graciously said yes, and here she is saying her own name. Should we play it? Did you hear that? Okay, so this experience led to a further discussion about the origin, culture, and meaning her name had, as well as other names hold in the Nigerian culture. So thank you for teaching me tape, not tope. So what's in a name? A lot of culture, history, and identity. The simple act of learning student names can make a lifelong impression for both the student and the teacher. Thank you.
I'm Oscar Zimmerman. I teach science and engineering at Woodbury High School. So what do I do that's culturally responsive? Well, I focus on relationships, choice, and voice, and giving voice to my students. And so much of culture affects, how students learn. So that's why it's so important to build relationships with them. And that cannot be done with one icebreaker at the beginning of the school year, which is kind of like what we do. And then we quickly move on to the curriculum. So this year I changed. I decided to change and kind of stepped up my game. Like Julie said, I'm trying to do that as an educator all the time. And I've decided that I'm going to spend the first week just getting to know my students. So the project that we did, if you look on the right, that infographic, so that's me. So I did one for myself, but I had each student create a graphic like that on themselves, things they like about their family, not necessarily anything to do with school, but who they are as individuals, so I could learn that. And that took about 2 or 3 days. We posted it on the classroom blog, and everyone could see that, including the world, I guess, which was sort of fun, but also allowed me to really learn about them. And other things that I also do is this video that I did before Christmas, so check it out. We're going to stop for the sake of time, but it was a gratitude assessment. You know, school can be so stressful. Christmas time can kind of go either way, you know, depending on how the family life is. So it was important to just have students just be kids, be themselves, and just look at good things in their life. So that's what I wanted to do. And that I think helps so much. Just, you know, let's not worry about school this time, but let's do that. And then this is what my classroom looks like. So I hope it's the first high school flexible seating room in the district, because I kind of want to be first who did it. No, really, what that allows me to do is really give students a lot of choice. There is no, you have to sit here, you have to sit there. It's like Starbucks. You walk in, you can sit wherever you want. Of course, habitually, students end up sitting in that same spot all the time, but they have that choice. And I think that communicates to them that, hey, you know, things will be different this year. And also, the activities that I have to do as a result are totally different. I can't just do PowerPoints all the time and lecturing. Students really have a lot of choice in how they can learn. And I think that's, you know, that's really important. And then last thing, voice, giving students voice. So that's such a cultural thing too, because not everyone's comfortable speaking in front of, you know, the big group. So the space that we're in is 100% collaborative. Students are in smaller groups where they are a lot more likely to speak, and I'm there with them in the space. I get rid of the teacher desk, and I'm just in there with the space. And I'm not really teaching, I'm learning with them and learning from them, facilitating, but using a lot of technology to give students voice. I use Twitter a lot, and I have my students tweet to a hashtag where, for example, if I ask them to compare and contrast a concept, and then they can tweet their summary, a picture of that, or a quick video on that. So they don't necessarily have to stand up and speak out. But what ends up happening, I think, that they get a voice if they're kind of more of an introvert. So yeah, and then the last thing, I'll just press that. And I'll just leave you with that, because that's how my journey to kind of changing what I do has begun. Education should be liberation, and we try to control so much, and I think that maybe sometimes we just kill the creativity of our kids, and maybe we need to shift the paradigm a little. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Amaral. I'm a special ed teacher at Woodbury High School. I'm the DCD high needs teacher there. And of course, special ed students are another group that are generally underrepresented and marginalized. So if our goal at Woodbury High School is to have all students feel a part of the school, then that includes special ed students as well. So Royal Connections is a student-run club that pairs up general ed students, up to 6 general ed students, with 1 special ed student. And we're starting with very high needs students to begin with. So I'm gonna let you push the buttons. All right, so to increase understanding, we want them to be able to see each other as, or see the similarities in each other, not just the differences, that they're teenagers, they have some of the same hopes and dreams and wishes. We want to build empathy, not sympathy, okay? They're not to be pitied because of their very high needs or their disabilities, nor are they superheroes because they're living, you know, and thriving with this. So we provide training, an hour and a half of training where they learn a little bit about each of the disabilities that the students in the club have, so that they understand kind of what they are and a little more about the different parts of special ed, the different eligibility areas in special ed. We also, after they are assigned a buddy, they meet with the buddy's case manager to find out more about that specific student, what their specific disability is, how it manifests itself in that student, because not everybody with the same disability, it doesn't manifest itself the same way. We have monthly activities where the buddies get together, and you'll be able to see a video about some of the things that they do in a minute. We also have organized buddy lunches where every other week they come pick up their special ed buddy from their class and take them to their lunch, and they sit with them and their friends instead of at the special ed table with paras. We also encourage weekly phone calls because our students aren't very good on the telephone, and so this gives them practice. This is a recruiting video that the president of our organization last year made for, it's part of a PowerPoint, but this will kind of show you some of the organizations, or some of the activities.
You're better than the best. I'm lucky just to linger in your light. Cooler than the flip side of my pillow. That's right. Completely unaware. Nothing can compare to where you send me. Lets me know that it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. In the moments when my good times start to fade, you make me smile like the sun, fall out of bed, sing like a bird, dizzy in my head, spin like a record, crazy on a Sunday night. You make me dance like a fool, forget how to breathe, shine like gold, buzz like a bee. Just the thought of you can drive me wild. Oh, you make me smile. Even when you're gone, somehow you.
This next slide shows just some of the results. I was amazed at how much change we saw so quickly. Last year was the first year that my seniors didn't have a para with them for the senior service projects. Normally we would have to find things for them to do on campus, and they had a para with them. Well, they went with their buddies out to feed my starving children and things like that. Also at graduation, there were no paras, sitting with anybody or escorting anybody up to receive their diploma. They went with their buddies. Yesterday, we had an intake meeting for a transfer student from Harding High School for a profoundly disabled student. After the meeting, the case manager was escorting the student and the parent out of the building and happened to run into a couple of Royal Connectors. So she called them over to introduce them to the new student. The student came over immediately, grabbed her hand, introduced herself, started talking to her. The student cannot communicate. She and the other Royal Connector and all the friends that were standing there with them encircled the parent and the student and spoke with them for a few minutes. When they disbanded, the mother looked at the case manager and said, "That was amazing." It was such a surprising experience for them to have, but obviously very welcoming. So that's what we're about. But Royal Connections gives those students that confidence to be able to do that, to be comfortable doing that. So special ed kids are also gaining confidence. I have a social skills class, and one of the projects was to interview a staff member and write a report and present it to the class. But they watch announcements every day, and they see some of their Royal Connectors making announcements. And so I asked them, if they would like to present their report to the whole school instead of just the class. And every one of them said yes. So this is the introduction to they did one report a week, or a day for the week.
My name is Raven.
Hi, my name is Kyle.
I'm Maria.
I'm John.
and Kenny.
We interviewed staff members for a class project.
We will be sharing one each day this week with the morning announcements.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy.
And then each day, one of them reported on the staff person that they had interviewed. So that's a good example of them gaining confidence and feeling more a part of what's going on in the school.
I need to make this full screen. My technology got messed up. Is it going to work?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay.
It'll be fine. Just move it back a little bit. My name is Ted Welsh. I'm a social studies teacher at Woodbury, and I teach economics and I teach geography. And happily for you guys, I'm here to present something on geography, not economics. And this is a lesson plan that I wanted to share with you, the board and superintendent, that I think has become a very valuable piece of my curriculum in the first term, and that is it's a project that's part of a unit where we learn about immigration, migration, and refugees. And this is just part of this. There's some reading and some videos that we watch as well. But this is kind of the heart of the whole thing here, where the students are asked to put together, do some research on their own family tree. And they have to take this handout home, and they have to ask their parents, do some research usually it's over MEA breaks. There's plenty of time there to touch base with grandparents if they need to. And in addition to that, after they've built a family tree up to 4 generations, then they have to also include a migration map. And it doesn't take, for a lot of my students, very long. You don't have to go back very far to all of a sudden have these arrows all over the world. And of course, they know this, but this then is shared with the entire class. This is much smaller than I thought it was going to be. But we create a Google map where parents, where the kids put their parents' birthplace, and you learn so much about your students, and the students learn so much about each other doing that particular activity of just coming up there and plopping down a point on a map, and then the discussion that this map is the focus of. We talk about push and pull factors of immigration, why people are coming from where they are, why to the United States, and a lot of that is economic. There's a lot of pull factors for the United States, but you do find out that there's a lot of students in my class that either they or their parents are refugees, and one of the reasons I like this lesson so much is it has so many uses, really. We talked about relationships. For sure, that builds relationships, not just between me and my students, but between students. Empathy as well. Learning to empathize with other people and people in other circumstances. Mm-hmm. And of course, we do get to sort of the nuts and bolts of immigration for geography. But the thing that I really like to put at the very bottom of this is that, in the climate that we are in right now, this puts a very personal face on this issue of immigration and refugees. So there it is.
I'm going to do some futzing. How do I get my presentation roll back up, Sarah? Because it's being cut off. It is. Over. Those dots helpful? I'm sure it's your Google Doc. Something popped up. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and start talking. Oh, go ahead. It's all right.
Good evening.
Would you actually pass those out to everybody?
Absolutely. All right.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Krenz, and I also teach AP Human Geography at Woodbury High School, as well as AP World History. As social studies teachers, Ted and I are really lucky in that our content is a very natural setting for culturally and linguistically responsive discussions. For example, after Dr. Holly visited in early December, we began a unit of study on political organization of space. And as part of this unit, we explore how ethnicity is often the determining criteria for creating a state or a country and for imposing boundaries. And sometimes the boundaries that are imposed do not always match ethnic distribution, and that can create conflict. So in order to really dig deeply into these issues, we began with a lesson that's built around the term ethnicity itself, because there's a lot of confusion about what that really means, and a lot of people also interchange it with race, and they're not necessarily the same thing. So as part of this lesson, students actually began by performing a close read of just a short paragraph from an expert on these terms, an anthropologist or a sociologist. And then they got into small groups and shared what their expert believed the difference between race and ethnicity was. Ultimately, those students then worked together to create a concept map, and so they're working collaboratively and coming up with examples and non-examples of what ethnicity means and what race means. And then finally, to close this lesson, I asked students to do just a quick write. I gave them a minute or two to answer a question. And actually, rather than telling you about that, I'd rather show you, if that's okay with you, which is why you have the paper in front of you. So my students responded to the question, what is the difference between race and ethnicity, and does it matter? But you've just heard an entire presentation about culturally and linguistically responsive teaching at Woodbury High School. So what I would like you to do instead is to write down just a bullet-pointed list of 3 key takeaways from this evening's presentation. As you finish up your thoughts, I'd like to let you know that this is actually an assessment. My students were awarded 50 points, which is the equivalent of a perfect test score on a unit exam, if they successfully completed this one last thing that I need you to do now. But you're probably not very highly motivated by points. So imagine instead that I have the power to add a $1,000 bonus to your compensation, as long as you can complete this one last thing successfully. So I want you to just pick up your quick write there and look at it really briefly, and then just crumple it up. Okay, now on the count of 3, to get $1,000, all you have to do is make the shot into the wastebasket. Oh, wow. All right.
Good luck, guys.
And the cheap seat's at the back. Come on. Oh, my gosh.
Come on, Sharon, help us out. We're a team. There we go.
I have to say, I'm very impressed with this group here. As I understand it, Mr. Slavin, you work in education. That explains your success. You know,
He coaches basketball.
well, there you go. I mean, that'll do it. Dr. Jacobus, I thought with all those letters behind your name, I expected a little bit more. And Needy, I don't even know where to start. You actually took my class. You've done this before, and still it didn't work out for you. So I think the takeaway here is, and the takeaway that I have from culturally and linguistically relevant teaching, is that your background whether it be your ethnicity or your race or your gender or your socioeconomic status or any other number of factors. It can either give you a head start toward achieving your goals, or it can present roadblocks. And it's our job as a community of learners to acknowledge the privileges and the disadvantages that are associated with where we come from. And we need to bridge those gaps by building an understanding of one another. And we can start with being culturally and linguistically responsive. Thank you.
So what Sarah didn't share with you is she used that example to teach her students about privilege. And students who were advantaged to just happen to be sitting by the garbage can were the ones who got the 50 points. And under no fault of your own, or were you given the choice to move? So in trying to find an analogy to have that discussion with students, it was quite engaging, and that was right after Dr. Holly. She said, I found this activity on Pinterest, I'm doing it. And the conversation was quite rich with 9th graders, 14-year-olds, about privilege and our opportunities and the disparities between the opportunities that some of our students have. So with that, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to share who we are, how we're growing. This is an example of a core value activity we did with our staff when I first started 3 years ago, and highlights really who we feel we are. A staff that values relationships. You can see empathy, compassion, authenticity, and we're continuing to grow and learn along with you and along with our students. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Just one question, Sarah, maybe for the group. I like the parent involvement, you know, with the group that you guys brought together. But how do we bring it to the rest of the parents then? How do we bring the rest of the parent group with some of the new concepts that you guys have brought forward?
Are you talking about our Royal Parent Academy?
Yeah, that to me seems like the central point, obviously, but is there other activities going out through the school that help to bring this new, you know, like the buddy system and some of those things to life with our parents too?
Well, hopefully a presentation like this would be public for parents to see. Parents have the opportunity when they come to open house to start to have some insight into the classrooms and the curriculum and the content that is covered. But in terms of doing a presentation for all of our parents to highlight all of these things, we haven't done anything like that. We continue to utilize our Royal Parent Academy, and really we're trying, depending on our target audience, we've had 3 sessions over the last 2 years to specifically reach out to those underserved families, the ones who did not attend college in the United States, who have not accessed college, who don't understand the system in the United States or our system of high school, so our avid families. So we've tried to target families who may not understand our system the way that others would.
Thanks.
I have one other anecdotal piece to share. First of all, fabulous, just fabulous presentation. And my daughter is fortunate to have Mr. Zimmerman for chemistry. And her, at student conferences, so the first try, grades weren't so great, because I know there's no way she's watching. I can say that. But second try, her grades were great. And I was like, well, I don't get it. Like, what happened? And he said, you know, she chose to sit with some different people. And those people that she's sitting with, they work together and really support each other. And I thought that's a great example of what, you know, your environment and sometimes opening up different styles to have that choice where kids can make some choices for what's better for them. So thank you all very much.
Any other questions? No? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming this evening and presenting. It's pretty amazing stuff you guys are doing. All right. 8.2 is our middle school update, and Mike Vogel, Interim Director of Facilities and Construction Management, will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair McAway-Stevens, board members, Superintendent Jacobus. I'd like to just provide the board with our bi-monthly, I guess it is now, update on our middle school progress and construction activities. I'd like to start with Cottage Grove and Lake Middle School. As indicated in your report, finishing touches were completed on the design and construction development documents this week. The projects are set to go out to bid the week of February 13th, which is this week. Our bid opening is scheduled for March 2nd, and the bid award on those projects is scheduled for March 16th. The district is working through the permitting process with the cities of Woodbury and Cottage Grove. The scope of work and size of the additions is such that it will trigger a stormwater management review, and so we are in the process of undergoing those with both Woodbury and Cottage Grove as well. Staff at each of the schools are finalizing the layout of the media centers and the collaborative learning spaces, and we will begin work on selecting finishes for those areas next week. As you may recall, the renovation of the space at Lake and Cottage Grove is scheduled to be completed in time for the start of the 2017-18 school year. The new additions, group room and choral room, probably won't be completed till about Thanksgiving timeline in 2017. If there are any questions as it relates to the Cottage Grove and Lake Middle School additions? Okay, I'll just move on briefly then to Woodbury Middle School. We're still in the design development phase at Woodbury Middle School. We have pretty much completed design of the 12 classroom connecting link addition between Woodbury Middle School and Woodbury Elementary. We are working on the design for the new kitchen and serving area spaces. Bids for Woodbury Middle School are going to be issued in early April, with a bid opening on tentatively scheduled for May 2nd and contract awards for the May 17th school board meeting. Those additions and improvements at Woodbury Middle School are not slated to be completed until the start of the 2018-19 school year. Questions or comments as it relates to Woodbury Middle School? Okay, I'll move on to New Oltman Middle School then. After a fairly extended period of adverse weather conditions, we are back working diligently on the site. If you've happened to drive by the site most recently, you'll see that there are mounds of dirt stacked just about everywhere. We are working, most of the work is proceeding from the southwest to the northeast on the site. So utility work has started. The trenches that are being dug for the utility, stormwater, and water are about 25 feet deep. And so the mounds of dirt that you see are as a result of all of that, the depth that they have to go to bury that stormwater. We are running into some issues in our utility installation with hitting rock at those depths. I think they have determined that the rock depth is almost 8 feet in some of those areas, and so it's not solid bedrock that they have to do blasting or anything, but it does really slow down the excavating of those sites. So they're continuing to work on that. Work is progressing on the footings and foundations. Unfortunately, it's still all below grade work, so you really don't see anything sticking out of the ground yet. But they are, again, working again from south to north on that. So the southern end is the classroom addition. We have about 20% of the footings and foundation work completed on the building to date. I think perhaps by late April, you'll be able to see the perimeter of the building take shape and be able to get a good sense of what the size and scope of the building's going to be. We still have the major bid package, Bid Pack 3, which is for all of the rest of the construction work and all of the interior work that needs to take place. That bid is tentatively scheduled for issuing on February 22nd. We hope to have a bid opening on March 28th, although it may be delayed until April 4th as our architect is still completing some of the detailed design specification work. So we'll have a bid opening either April 6th or April 13th, dependent on when that bid award, or I'm sorry, the bid opening date is. With that, I'd take any questions that you might have relative to the new Altman site. All right. Well, that concludes my update, and thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Agenda item 8.3 is the financial update, and this is one of my favorites because one of my goals as board chair was to get a monthly update, and presenting that financial update this evening is Dan Pyan, Director of Finance.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Jacobus, and student board members. Tonight we will, this is a clicker. Tonight we will, I guess I termed a state of the budget. I just want to give you an update, and so we can keep things in mind of how what our future looks like, but to bear in mind what we're facing us next fall, through the summer and next fall. It is. I was going to tell you a snow story, but all the snow is melting. But we probably will have another snowstorm yet. So, I have a brother. Actually, I have a couple brothers. And a long time ago, when my brother was first married, he moved up to Minneapolis, and they rented a house in North Minneapolis. And before he left, we were from a small town, and my dad said, "Well, make sure that you know what you're doing. So listen to WCCO when it snows, find out where you're supposed to park." So he did. In the first snowstorm, he heard that you park on the even side of the street. So he goes out there and puts his car on the even side of the street. And the next time, it snows, he listens to WCCO, and they said park on the odd side of the street, and he runs and does that. Well, a couple weeks later, they overslept, and he wakes up and there's snowing pretty bad, and he goes, "Dang it, I didn't hear where I'm supposed to put my car. What side of the street I'm supposed to park on?" And his wife says to him, "I don't know. Why don't you just leave it in the garage this time?" I don't quite know how I can tie that into the budget, but I'll try. Tonight, some of the terms we're going to talk about, just so it's working on the budget is kind of, actually presenting on the budget is kind of like, it's not like church, because you hear the same thing all the time. It just depends on what time of year it is. And this time of year, we're just doing updates, and we'll go over the schedule later, but you'll see that every month we have something going on that you're going to need to know about or make decisions on. Tonight, as we talk about the budget in general, I just want to talk about a few terms first. When we talk about fund balance, we have 5 different funds, but right now we're just focusing on the general fund. And when we talk about fund balance, for our discussion tonight, it's the unassigned funds plus the reserve restricted funds. And our goal at some point is to get our unassigned funds to a healthy fund balance, at least 5 to 9%. Unassigned funds, those are the ones that are used for operations, including instruction, that's the main cost, instructional support, transportation, maintenance, and district administration, and anything else we do. Now, it doesn't include food service or community services, but it's those main functions we do every day to educate and transport our kids. The percentage we talk about is the balance we have divided by the total expenditures that made up those that were used to come to that fund balance, and our board goal is about 5 to 9%. Some of the funds we have are reserved by statute and by rule. And those reserve funds include operating capital, of which we are to reserve a certain portion of our general education aid, and we levy some for that. And all that money needs to be spent on capital type items. We have safe schools, which is self-explanatory. We levy for a certain amount, and we get to spend that money to improve safety efforts in each school, pay for our school resource officers, things like that. Gift accounts, that's money that's donated, as you see every week. every board meeting in which we publish the donations. And those have specific purposes that we find out when we get the donation, and we usually put that on the report. And then we have to put those in separate accounts to make sure that we spend it on those purposes. Long-term facilities maintenance, which is generally a new term. It used to be called alternative facilities. That's for construction, school nutrition, obviously, debt service, building construction, community services, and then our OPEB funds, which is to pay for severance and other post-employment benefits, is the Internal Service Fund. That's Fund 20, and the student activity accounts. So those are funds that come in, but they have to be spent on those for those purposes. Generally, reducing spending in those funds will not affect our unassigned fund balance. So it's good to build those up so you have them ready for things, but generally you're going to spend those down to what they came in for. Stat development's another one that is, you have to reserve a certain amount, but you don't have to reserve by code anymore. And the spending in those reserve funds is limited by the targeted revenues of the fund. Okay, so the numbers, we're always looking at 3 budgets at one time. We're looking at the last budget, we're looking at the present budget, we're looking at the next year's budget. 2015, we had revenues about $197.4 million, and we had expenses about $196.5 million, so we actually had a net increase in fund balance by $831,000, which left us with a fund balance of $10.3 million, about 5.2%. 2016, this last year that was just audited, we had revenues of $209 million, and we had expenses about $212 million. So we had a reduction in our fund balance of about $3 million. We knew that was coming. We went through a bunch of budget reduction procedures, and we looked at the new revenue coming in from the referendum, and we knew that, well, if we can make it through one more year, we're going to have new referendum money coming in the next year. That left us with a fund balance of about 3.6%, which we knew was going to be below our fund balance policy, about $7.3 million. 17 is the year we're in right now. We're budgeting and projecting about $211.6 million in revenues and about $211.3 million in expenses, a net of about $200,000, increasing our fund balance to about $7.5 million or 3.5%. You can see by this chart that our fund balance policy range is between 5 and 9%. And if you look back through history, we've always had a pretty healthy fund balance. This last 2 years, this last year and then this year, we're going underneath our fund balance policy, and our goal is to get that back up to about at least to 5% as soon as we possibly can. So I'll talk a little bit about revenue budgets or revenue in general. And like I said, you've probably heard this every year for as many years as I've been on the board, but it's always good to keep hearing how this stuff works. Majority of our revenue is derived from state aid. The state aid is a pretty simple formula, simple but complicated formula, but it really comes down to an amount that the legislature has determined is the basic formula amount multiplied by the number of students who attend our schools. The basic formula right now is $6,067 per student. It has not kept pace with inflation. In fact, it's fallen behind about $550 per pupil since 2003. This has caused not only us, but most every district in the state to rely more on local operating revenue, which can only be attained by passing an operating referendum. District 833 utilizes about $1,876 per student in voter-approved operating referendums. There's also laws that cap the amount that you can ask your local voters for, and right now that cap is about $2,150 per student. I'd have to check. It changes with inflation. This graphic just points out how it's changed just in the last 4 years. At the end of, in 2012, 2013, at South Washington County Schools, state aid made up 80% of our revenue. In 2016-17, state aid makes up only 75%, I shouldn't say only 5, but 75% of our revenue, meaning that we had to shift dependence on the local voters, local taxpayers. As we know, a key proponent of that formula, or the amount we get for state aid, is the number of kids multiplied by the basic formula. We can't really control the basic formula, except for lobbying with the legislatures as often as we can. And we don't really control enrollment, although we've monitored as much as we can. So 10 years ago, our enrollment was 16,618, and we're projecting 10 years later that it's going to be 18,365. So it's an increase of about 175 students per year, about 1% a year. It's a nice, slow, steady growth, as you can see by the chart. And as far as budget reasons for the next 4 years, I'll be using a more conservative approach for budget reasons, just so that we don't overextend ourselves and not have the kids available, the money available. So I'm budgeting about 0.5% per year. As far as our expense budgets go, salaries are our largest expense. It's about 61% of our budget goes to salaries. Every 1% that we look at of our salaries, as we look at increases or decreases, it equals about $1.3 million. Benefits are the second largest part of our budget, about 24.3%, and every 1% on our benefits is about $510,000. The rest of our budget is in our district, salaries are about $127 million, $128 million. Benefits are about $51.3 million. The next highest expense are services that we purchase. Some are tuition, and that's about $17 million here, about 8%. Supplies, we spend about $7 million a year. That's only about 2.5% of our budget, so when we get to budget cut time, we really don't have much more to cut on the supply side. And then capital composes of about $9.4 million of our budget, and that's about 4%. And that's when I was talking about operating capital and then long-term facility maintenance plans. Those kind of things are planned out, and they're spent for that reason. And not spending those funds doesn't really help your unassigned fund balance. Just a few more things about spending at South Washington County Schools. The latest profiles data, which is found on the MDA website, I see they do have 16 on there now, but it's for comparison reasons when we were putting this together. The most recent was 2015. And our spending, we spend about $10,886 per student, total spending. The metro average is $11,300, and the statewide average is $11,400. So we're keeping ourselves low compared to the metro average and the state average. In the classrooms, however, that's where we try to put most of our money. We spend $5,244 per pupil. Metro average is just $5,032, and our average, and the statewide average is about just almost $5,000. So as you can see, we spend the least, but what we do spend, we spend in the classroom relative to these other districts. And then the district administration spending, we spend about $263 per pupil. The metro average is $500 per pupil. The state average is about almost $500 per pupil also. As far as how we're doing so far this year, and we will beef up this report. It's a work in progress, but this is what we'll talk about each month when we just do our budget update and try to just tell you what's going on. The first column of this report you can see is our is our original budget. Year-to-date so far of the revenues, we've collected 42% of the budgeted revenues. It kind of shows you the lag we run into with state funding. For one thing, they only meter out 90% of your aid, and then at the end of the year, they catch it up over the last 3 months of the next year. And besides that, they have to cash flow that's too, so it's not they don't take the $127 million and divide it by 12 and boom, boom, multiply by 90% and just pay it out. They actually have a complicated schedule that you can look up online and shows that some months you get a lot, some months you don't. Federal sources are only 28%. Mostly that's because it's title money that we have to submit through a service program, and they're usually lag on that. As far as spending goes, we spent about 51% of our budget, and then we're at about 58% of our year so far. However, most of that reduction is in regular instruction because we pay our teachers all the way through next September. So it's not really halfway to them. It's halfway to, we stop on June 30th, but the teachers get, their pay goes 3 more months out. So it's a little misleading to see that we haven't spent as much there because it'll all get spent. It's just, it goes after the school year is out, and we accrue it back. Otherwise, everything looks like it's pretty much on track. The sites and buildings is always going to be ahead of budget just because we do projects in the summers, and we got some projects that we were finishing up last summer. And then as far as our fiscal programs, right now we haven't spread all our major insurance expenses like work comp and things like that. So they're all sticking in one spot. They would get spread among all the departments. But you can see the lag we run into where, you know, we've collected $90 million and we've already spent $108 million. And that's just something that we have to learn to live with, and that's the trick of cash flowing and things like that, just because the state doesn't pay the aid in neat little packages. So what's next? Next month we'll go over our forecast for the next 5 years. I mean, we won't talk for 5 years, but we'll forecast for the next 5 years. We'll continue our referendum discussions just because, you know, we have to look at what's going on ahead. Like I said, right now, you know, on schedule, we were looking at, we have to renew our largest referendum in the fall, which would not have any tax impact. Renewing that, it would be, in fact, even if we renew it, the taxes should go down because property values have gone up. But then the board is also going to probably be considering increasing, having another question increasing our levy by $375 per pupil. We'll keep those discussions going on. We'll talk in April, we'll present the revised budget, so then we'll pretty much know how we're going to end up in 17. We'll know what our beginning fund balance is. We're going to have a pretty good guess on what our beginning fund balance will be for the next year. And then in June, we'll bring you the preliminary budget for 17-18. And then in November, there'll be some election. There'll be at least one election and one question to see if we renew, and then whatever other questions the board wants to go with. And then, of course, we started getting audited in July, and then we'll come up with our final numbers for the final for 16-17, which gives us the exact amount of our beginning balance for 17-18. I'll entertain any questions or any comments.
I just appreciate all the great work, and the charts are really helpful to get those comparisons, so thank you very much.
I was in such a hurry I missed the slide, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to talk about enrollment, how important it is going up and down. Each student is about $9,300, and then we really don't know what's going on with state and federal aid, state legislation, contract settlements, and other revenues.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to seeing you every month. All right. The next agenda item, 9.0, discussion items. We have none this evening. 10.0 action items. Item 10.1, approval of Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Incentive Program School Site Grant Agreement. And that will be presented by Mike Vogel, Interim Director of Facilities and Construction Management, and a team.
Thank you again, Chair McAvoy-Stevens, board members, Superintendent Jacobus. We had an opportunity to present this item to the school board at a workshop at our last school board meeting. There were a number of questions that board members had, so we have asked the members of the Ramsey-Washington Watershed and their engineering firm to come back, and they present a PowerPoint that will share with you some of the different types of plantings that they're proposing to put into the rain garden installation at Woodbury Elementary, and share with you some of the installation processes and some of the purposes behind the rain garden. So I would ask those folks to come up and make a presentation to you first. Then I would come back after you've had a chance to ask questions from them and ask for approval of the grant agreement. So with that, Sage, if
Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Paige Auberg. I work with Sage Passy, who some of you met at the Watershed District, and then with me is Matt Kumka from Bar Engineering. I'm going to give a little bit of history on the grant project. It's very fitting that we followed the budget guy because we're here to give you something that we think is really cool that you don't have to pay for. So you can't beat that. This grant opportunity comes from the Clean Water Legacy Land and Legacy Amendment. The Watershed District was awarded a grant to offer funds to specifically target at schools to do stormwater management. We target schools along with churches and larger commercial sites because they have a large amount of impervious surfaces, these hard surfaces, parking lots, roof runoff, that all just drain directly into our storm sewers, which go into, in your case, Battle Creek Lake, without any treatment. So our goal as a watershed district is to manage stormwater, improve water quality, and that's where these grants come in. So we last year put in worked with 3 schools to put in rain gardens, 2 in Maplewood and 1 technically in North St. Paul. And then we have 2 in Roseville next year on board, and hopefully 1 in Woodbury. A little bit of history, like I said, our goal is water quality. So here's a picture of Battle Creek Lake. This is a picture looking at the future site of the Sunrise Shopping Center. Basically, this was like mid-1950s. Before this time, all of our stormwater pretty much infiltrated where it dropped. So weren't all the pollutants coming off of the roadways. Those got constructed. The 60s, we had the big boom of construction, all these highways coming in, all of our cars, all the pollutants that come off of those pretty much now run straight into our lakes. And Battle Creek area is a high priority for us because it is targeted by the state as having high pollutant loads. So we're trying to target this area to reduce those pollutant loads. This is a aerial photo from 1945, just showing, you can see where Woodbury Elementary and Woodbury Middle School are, those 2 triangles on there, and not a lot going on back then. So the lake was pretty clean. And then this is a 2016 aerial photo, showing all the development that's gone in, and all of that dirty water is just running right into Battle Creek Lake. And with that, so our goal with these rain gardens is to, like I said, reduce pollution. So we are targeting specifically to reduce volume of water. We want to capture the stormwater, hold it in these rain gardens for a period of 48 hours. That allows then the water to soak into the ground, and these will have a filtration system, so they will filter out the pollutants. Specifically, we're targeting phosphorus
which causes all those beautiful algae blooms that you see in the summer. So we're trying to reduce that phosphorus load by having native plants that Matt will talk about in a little bit. They uptake those pollutants and keep it out of our waterways. Just a picture of Battle Creek Lake if you haven't been out there. Matt, do you want me to talk about this? Or sightlines? So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about some of these questions came up at the workshop about, what kind of plants we use, making sure we think about sightlines and whatnot when we plan these. So I will turn this over to Matt now to talk about that.
So hi, thank you for having me, Matt Kumkubar Engineering. We were lucky enough to have our soil boring drill rig on site when the Google car went by and took this street view here. That piece of equipment that you see there is actually our soil testing firm that we hired. We look under the ground to understand what the subsoils are like and whether or not we can expect infiltration. As we suspected, the soils here are fairly heavy. Lucky for us, though, there's a storm sewer in the corner there that we're able to tie into and get the filtration. So I'd like to talk briefly about our process in terms of making sure that these are safe. It was brought up at the last meeting, and it's an excellent point that we want to respect the sight lines of the traffic along Upper Afton and School Drive here. So you can see where the soil rig is. That's essentially on the back side, the sort of southern end of the rain garden. There's the sidewalk, and then there's that catch basin in the corner. Our garden will essentially be south of that catch basin. But to that effect, we modified the planting plan a little bit to just ensure that we were staying nice and low in terms of the plantings on that corner. So handed out was the planting plan, which shows the individual species for the areas, and then some pretty photos highlighting the plants that we choose. Like Paige said, we tend to use native plants that are deep-rooted and tend to be very tough in terms of the conditions that we're creating for them. They're drought tolerant. They don't require any additional input in terms of fertilization or irrigation. We choose things that look good in large massings. So aesthetics are really something we're considering. And we do these plantings because these are fairly large gardens in large massings. We don't tend to do little clumps of plants. Even though those individual plants can look good together, it tends to look a little messy. And that's not a look we're going for. We don't seed these. We plant them with large containerized plants. So there's nice green, flowing architectural lines of these plants immediately. We choose things that tend to stay fairly low, waist high or lower. Some of the larger grasses, if you look on the sheet there, are chest high on me perhaps, but those are the ones that are in the lowest portions of the gardens. So 3 feet or more of excavation off the road there. So they tend to still only be a few feet from the street level and above. So keeping that in mind, the traffic should have no problem pulling up to the intersection and being able to see in either direction of Upper Afton quite a distance and be able to safely make those turns. So that's all I had to say in terms of the plants and the sight lines. Is there anything else we wanted to cover? Another look. There's our drill rig. So there's 2 gardens. One is going to be on the school district site, and one is going to be on Woodbury property across the street there. The City of Woodbury Engineering had looked at this and they approved it. They don't have any comments for us. They were fine with the garden the way it was designed. Little color-coded key showing the planting plan, where the plants are going to be. Essentially, we designed this in a way where the gardens work together aesthetically. They kind of balance one another across the street there. So color-coded per species. And then a look at the plants. Down in the bottom of the garden, we have the sort of low mounding grasses and sedges. There's some pops of color that come out of that. I'm the co-chair of the Pollinator Summit at the University Arboretum, so I'm very concerned with pollinators and supporting our native pollinators. So we sequence blooms in the garden where things are coming into bloom at different times during the year to make sure there's pollen and nectar available for our local pollinators. And then there's also a lot of our species nest on the ground, for instance. Our native bumblebees are solitary insects, so they love this cover of these grasses. So we're essentially creating this pollinator habitat at the same time we're tracking for stormwater quality improvement. So a little bit of a combination in terms of the prairie drop seed and the echinacea, the purple coneflower that we'll be using. Sort of the massing effect, we'll even have larger masses than this, but consistent color and texture. The grasses add a very vibrant, beautiful green lushness to the garden. Again, these moundings, this is very popular in landscape architecture these days, these massings of these grasses and sedges. And then along the side, we'd end up doing some of these low floral plants. The purple in the front there is a Walker's low catmint species. The bees really love this one quite a bit, the native bumblebees and our butterflies. And it stays very low, knee-high or so along the edge, very floral, very beautiful. And these are some projects that we installed at some faith-based sites over the last few years. These are relatively smaller with tighter pockets of more diversity in terms of the species. Granted, our project is going to be potentially larger than this with large massings like I was describing. Again, some precedent projects in the Watershed District. One with water in it. This has some hydrangea. We're not doing any hydrangea, but you get a sense for the general aesthetic. And then in terms of the maintenance, I'll hand it back to Paige.
Thank you. So maintenance, I think, was a concern at the workshop that came up, and so the rain gardens are going to be 100% funded by the district through that Clean Water Fund grant, and then the remaining funds will be covered by the Watershed District. Maintenance is also, it's a very hard thing for schools to take care of. You don't have people around in the summer, so our board agreed to cover maintenance for the longevity of the project. So every year we will hire a professional contractor to come out. We're actually in the process of going through that process right now for our current projects that'll be maintained this year. So we hire someone to come out. They do, pretty intense cleanup. What doesn't get done, Sage has worked with the principal and some of the teachers to get the students out there in the spring and maybe in the fall to do some of that cleanup just to get them outside and get them in touch with these rain gardens, and then the contractor will take care of everything else. So they'll come out maybe 3 to 4 times a year, do pretty intense cleanup, make sure that mulch is replaced when needed. If there's any plant die-off, the plants are all warranted for 1 year from the time they're installed, and then after that we'll do any replacement as needed. And then we have, I think, a copy of the agreement, hopefully you guys have seen, and that just says at the school that you'll keep it in place. The terms of the grant are 20 years, so that you won't fill it in. This is tax dollars going to use, so we want to make sure that we're getting the pollutant removal that we see, but then we'll in turn keep up with that maintenance. And we're here if any issues arise, we have contractors on hand that can make those fixes that we work with a lot, so not a problem there. Signage, we are working to design some signs to go out. This is an example that for a school, Weaver Elementary, that we installed last year. You'll have a similar sign out there. It's a requirement of the Clean Water Fund grant to have these signed with their logo so that people know what this is and why it's out here, what it's doing. So we'll work with the school to find a good spot for that where people can see it. And timeline. So the plans are out for review. You guys have the plans. That's going on right now. And then our board is going to approve these. They'll review everything and have it approved at our March 1st board meeting. And then this goes out for a request for proposal, so we can receive bids from qualified contractors. We review those bids. It's a formal bid opening process. We select the lowest qualified bidder, and then our board managers awards that to the contractor. Construction will take place over the summer. We have bar engineering staff, our staff on site throughout the process to make sure that it's being installed correctly. Keep an eye on the contractor. We have them, do check-ins throughout the process, so it's all monitored and installed correctly. The city probably will come out, like Matt said, they reviewed the plans and didn't have any concerns, but they may come out too and do some review as it's going in. And then planting will happen in the fall with Sage working with some of the student groups out there. That's it. Are there any questions, comments?
Oh, well, I was gonna, normal procedure would be to bring it as a motion first before we,
Oh, you know what?
because this is an action item this evening, so by Robert's rule, we need to bring it to a motion first, then we can have open dialogue, so.
Sure, okay.
So I'd ask the chair out.
And
I will-
actually, I learned that we don't need to do that. We probably shouldn't, but let's do it. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval of Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Incentive Program School Site Grant Agreement.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Katie Schwartz, second by Sharon Van Leer. And with that, we can have discussion.
So the one question I have, again, I brought up at our last meeting was around irrigation. So maybe a couple questions. Is there any irrigation on the city side of the street then? Are they gonna be getting watered throughout the summer and ours would not? Or both sites will be no irrigation?
Neither sites are currently irrigated. We'll have a 1-year establishment period with the contractor to ensure that our plants are well established, but we're choosing species that wouldn't require any additional irrigation. So no, they would get no irrigation on either side of the street, city property or school.
Even knowing they'd be in full sun, pretty much all summer long?
We've, over the last 15 years, refined our plant palette to choose things that have proven successful. Yes, these are cultivars or the native prairie species. They love that condition. They would not grow in the shade. They need that full sun. They'll get occasional supplemental watering through the rain garden process, accepting water. But other than that, they would require no additional irrigation, and they will thrive.
Just my comment then, I'm really supportive of this now. It's put bringing the plants to life in my mind has helped sway my mind. I like the thought process of having multiple colors come through the year. I've seen, in fact, personal story, that's the way my backyard is set up. We purposely did that so you get the color throughout the whole year. And so I think that'll actually be aesthetically looking. I was worried about curb appeal, but I think we would have curb appeal all year with number of plants, blossoming at different times. And I do like the idea of bringing it in for the bees, because we all know we have a bee, probably the more of us that can get those type of pollinating plants. So I like that thought process coming forward. So again, I like that the heights will give us the visibility now. So I'm very comfortable supporting this initiative moving forward, and thank the Water District for the grant to bring that forward to us.
Any other questions?
Yeah, no, just wonderful, and I appreciate the preventive thinking with the Watershed District, and we're in similar businesses in that way and trying to do good things that sometimes are hard to see how that pans out. To be co-chair of the pollinator group, get some really fun stuff that you're doing. So very fun, very successful, I think, great partnership for all government agencies, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other additional questions or concerns, comments, discussion? Okay, well, with that, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Incentive Program School Site Grant Agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much for partnering with us. We do appreciate that. All right, moving into 11.0, that's our reports and comments. 11.1 is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have two things to talk to you about tonight, but the first one is to spend time with other people in the state to thank you for the work that you do on the school board. The Minnesota School Board Association has designated February 20th through the 24th as School Board Recognition Week. South Washington County Schools will join districts throughout the state to honor their local education leaders during Minnesota's annual School Board Recognition Week. The commemorative week is designed to recognize the contributions made by Minnesota school boards including the South Washington County School Board, who are charged with governing public education under state law. I believe public education is one of the most important endeavors we as a society can undertake. Your willingness and commitment to bring local voice to educational policy decisions helps ensure a strong connection with our local community, interests, hopes, and dreams for their children. As you know, Minnesota school board members oversee multi-million-dollar budgets which fund education programs for more than 825,000 students in approximately 2,000 schools. Their personal decisions affect more than 52,000 teachers and thousands of administrators and support workers. In our system, you manage approximately, as we saw tonight, $210 million a year to help support 18,300 students and almost 3,000 full-time employees and hundreds of part-time employees. You are responsible for formulating school district policy, approving curricula, maintaining school facilities, and adhering to state and federal education law. Legal concerns and complexities of school finance, including budgeting and taxation, require you to spend many hours in school board training programs and personal studies to enhance your understanding of these issues. It's also important for our public to know that you spend countless hours meeting and speaking with district leaders to fully understand our system and our classroom practices. The selfless dedication to students in our system is commendable, and we thank you for your commitment. Our deepest appreciation is extended to you and other board members throughout the state who make it possible for our local citizens to participate in education in our communities. I'd like to thank you and join. I'd ask all of us to join in thanking you and the other Minnesota State Board members. And we have a certificate of thanks to present you with this evening. And I'll hand those out as we finish, so we can keep moving. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about was Shadow a Student Day. Supporting our strategic objectives of personalization and culture and climate, the Teaching and Learning Department designed a Shadow Student experience for our teaching staff. This week we had almost 40 teacher leaders from a variety of grades and specialty areas shadow students in grades 3 through 12 at 16 different schools. They met their students first thing in the morning at the door and followed them through their entire day. They spent time in literacy blocks, physical education, geometry, lunch, recess, and band, and were all observed as part of all these courses and activities were observed as part of each student's schedule. The teachers will be given time to process their experience and contemplate any changes they will make to their classrooms as part of the learning of how it was to be a student in our system. This was a wonderful way to see learning through our students' eyes. A few comments that were made by teachers who experienced the Shadow Day. The first one, when I talked to my classes about the day, they said they thought that every teacher should have to shadow a student. They asked me what I was going to do with the information, and I told them I do not know, but I promise you I will not do nothing with it. Another teacher said, I teach the same content all day, and they are switching their physical spaces and mental focus every period. It was really interesting to see the range of subjects the students have throughout the day, which we all know, but experiencing it firsthand was refreshing. Another comment was, the environment of a classroom feels completely different from the student's seat than I ever realized from my teacher's seat. Someone else commented about, my shadow experience was amazing. My student was so good-natured about me following him everywhere, and I was so surprised by the intensity of his schedule. I was exhausted last night. I learned so much from sitting in each of his classes and eating at his lunch table. And we have just a short video that Laura put together. This is part of a larger video demonstrating what took place throughout the day, and so you have a chance to understand this from firsthand experience.
I'm Stacy Hines. I'm a 6th grade math teacher at Oltman Middle School, and today I had the chance to shadow a student at Cottage Grove Middle School, an 8th grader. I had the opportunity to go through her entire schedule today, what she does, what she hears, what she sees, everything in all of her classes. I got to experience the panic of having a social studies math test today, so I would have been studying a lot more last night had I known that was coming today. But it was a really, really good experience. I had a chance to sit with the student that I shadowed and some of her friends at lunchtime and just kind of have a conversation. What do you wish teachers knew?
I'm Karina Lushik. I'm in 8th grade, and I go to Cottage Grove Middle School. And today, Miss Hines followed me around. She asked me a few questions, like what it was like to be a student, and I think it was cool because she got to be able to see the eyes through a student. I think the benefits are that the teachers can see maybe how different students act or see different teachers and maybe how they behave and what they can do to make it better or what they can do to improve.
Hola, my name is Angela Brutus and I work at Nuevas Fronteras. Sometimes as teachers we want to get right down to business, but it's important to remember that they need that social aspect too. I just think that it's great that the district is embarking on this journey, and I think that as we continue to integrate technology in our society, sometimes we miss that link of personalization and of getting to know each other and of communicating face to face.
It was cool, and I think it was kind of fun that they got to take tests too, so you don't always get to hear about that, so I think that was fun.
I think the personalization piece, all our work that we're doing is trying geared toward making those changes, but really seeing and listening to student voice. But a day like today, especially for teachers that are actively moving, to sit and to see what it's like to sit period after period if you are changing classes in the secondary schools, or the amount of time and different activities that students are engaged at the elementary has been. It's an invaluable experience, and I hope we continue that throughout the next couple of years with more teachers being involved with having that chance.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you, Keith. 11.2, our student school board member reports. We'll start with Melody Armstrong from Park High School. Welcome back.
Hello, I am so glad to be back. It feels really weird having a month without a meeting. I kept thinking I needed to write something down, I needed to get ready, and I was like, oh right, no, that already happened. I missed that. So, I'm back. For athletics at Park, all of our winter sports are doing really well. We've had a lot of student support lately, and you can really tell because people are starting to talk about what happens at games, and not just people who are in the games or who usually go, but like people that you didn't think liked basketball. So like that kid in your math class that hasn't said a word to you all week is like, did you see what they did in that basketball game? And that's really cool to see happening everywhere in our school. Our cheer is entering a new season, which is really fun because they practice in our commons, so you get to walk by them practicing, and they're totally open to just let you sit there and watch them sweat it out, but it's really fun to see. Our tennis is starting up, and all of our spring sports are getting really excited to start, and I think it's fun for everyone to kind of see the snow go away. Maybe not the people in skiing, but you know. We have had a crazy month for arts. Our one act was really successful. We went to state and got 3 stars, which was an amazing experience. We had more support than I have ever seen. I got to work really closely with our superfans this year because we've gone to state kind of a lot, and we haven't really had a whole lot of student support because, you know, when a sports team goes to state, you get to bring signs and you bring giant buses full of fans, but you can't really do that for a one-act festival because you have to sit there, watch the play, clap, and then leave. But this year we did get a fan bus, and we decided, you know, if they can have a fan bus, why not us? People would love to go and just see a couple shows, and it turned out so much better than we expected. The bus was full. We actually ended up turning people away, and we had, I think it was 15 to 20 students drove themselves and others to St. Kate's because they couldn't get on the bus. So that was just an amazing thing for our school to unite over, and they had signs that they all signed for us, and it was just amazing. And the journey for One Act isn't over yet. We got selected out of a lottery to perform at the Thespian Festival this weekend. So we get to do it once again at the Guthrie stage, so that's really exciting. And in the midst of all this, the musical is starting, so we get to have double rehearsals, which is long and fun. And we are doing the Addams Family. We're all so excited. We had our first dance rehearsal tonight, so I got to leave straight from there to come here. Also, we have a ton of March music concerts coming up for band and orchestra and choir. And these are the funner ones where we get to do kind of pop music and things that the kids suggest. So that's really exciting. Also, our IB art class every year does a showcase, and so they get to put all of their amazing art into our multi-purpose room. And it's really interesting this year because one girl is decorating the room for her art project. So she's in there every day, like putting tape on the walls, and that's just really exciting. Academically, we are in a period of transition. They have decided to make some pretty drastic changes to Wolfpack Hour because they were concerned about some of the safety of the students and just making sure that we have the most efficient use of time that we can. So that's definitely something that our school is having to, I think it's really actually uniting us. I think it's helping us to understand more about how school works and how we can make ourselves a better school through utilizing something that is so specific to Park. So that's something that we are able to really learn through. Also, it's testing season is coming. All of us are preparing for IB tests, AP tests. Everyone is signing up, and all the teachers are getting ready to do the big push review, especially for seniors who know they have 3 months left. We also have this thing that we started called ICCU. I talked about it a while ago, but it's where we have drawings and the students get really cool prizes. So things like we have a ride along with our officer at the school. We get secret tour tunnels because there's tunnels under our school. So you get to take yourself and a friend to go with the custodian and see the tunnels. Yeah, it's really fun. So we've been able to do that. And that's just been helpful to make our big ICC initiative helpful for the students to see how fun it can be and how rewarding it is. Lastly, our snow week is coming up, even though we don't have snow. But we get to have a board game week. That's our theme, is board games. So we have giant decorations getting ready. And with that, it launches our Pennies for Patience drive, which has been really successful in the past. And this year, we decided to do what's called a teacher bucket drive. So what we do is we have a bucket with the teacher's face on it. And students will donate money, and the top 3 teachers who get the most money will have to dress up and parade during our Pep Fest. And that's really exciting because this week I got to edit their showdown video. And if you've ever approached 7 teachers and said, I need you to look like you're getting ready to box the teacher next to you, it gets really creative and fun. So that's going to be amazing for our school to really push to donate a lot of money. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Melody. Next, we have Needy Jeriwala from Woodbury High School.
All right, so the Chinese New Year celebration kicked off the start of the month at Woodbury High School. And so the Chinese club decorated the entire school for the whole week. It was really nice seeing all those decorations up, know that giving some knowledge to all the students who didn't really know about it before. And the week after that was the winter week. And basically what that was the student council planned dress-up days for the whole week leading up to the annual winter dance on Friday. So all the students for the entire week were dressed up in Arctic clothing, or they were dressed up wearing jerseys or something like that. And it was really nice to see everyone's school spirit. And then finally on Friday, we had Royal Day, where everyone could wear royalty clothes, or maybe they're blue and white, and things like that. And coming up this Saturday is the National Honor Society is throwing their annual coffee house, in which students in the school will perform their talents, and they can raise money for the money made from coffee house will go to the homeless. And the Suburban East Conference on February 6th for the Woodbury Band, Orchestra, and Choir was a huge success, and music students from all around Minnesota all went to Roseville and Roseville High School and performed for everyone. It was really great. And more March music concerts are coming up for the band and orchestra in beginning of March, Athletics at Woodbury High School involve Nordic skiers, and there are many tournaments happening now that the season is ending. And the girls and boys basketball teams have games all of next week against Eastridge. And the boys and girls varsity swim team have meets all of next week also against Tartan. And registration for spring sports is starting, And finally, Link Crew is throwing a freshman fun night at the end of this month. All for freshmen, because after a stressful second trimester, freshmen really need this, and the freshmen can play basketball or dodgeball, and the Link Crew leaders will hang out with them, and this just marks a little happy end to the end of the month.
Thank you, Needy. Our rep from Eastridge High School, Hayden Schultz, was not able to be with us tonight, but he did leave us a report. So once again, I am honored to be able to read this for him. All right, so the arts at Eastridge. Theater just finished their 2 one-act plays, Long Christmas Dinner and Childhood, both by Thornton Wilder. These were performed during the Eastridge Spirit Week on February 3rd and 4th. The Eastridge Musical Department also has a few events coming up that they have been working hard to perfect. First, the Eastridge Band has their winter concert on Thursday, February 23rd at 7:30 in the Loft Stage. Next, the Eastridge Orchestra has their winter concert on Monday, February 27th at 7 p.m. in the Loft Stage. Lastly, the Eastridge Choir has their winter concert on Thursday, March 2nd at 7:30 in, you guessed it, the Loft Stage. I'm reading this word for word. Okay. Athletics. Eastridge boys basketball is close to finishing off their great regular season with a record of 16-5 with 4 games left, which includes 2 big intra-district games. This Friday, they take on Park at Park. Also, this upcoming Tuesday, they take on Woodbury at the Perch. Eastridge girls basketball is also finishing off their exceptional regular season so far with a record of 18-5 with 3 games left, which, just like the boys, includes 2 big intra-district games. This Friday, they take on Park at the Perch for senior night. Also, this upcoming Tuesday, they take on Woodbury at Woodbury. Additionally, Noelle Tomes and Mariah Sexy were both nominated as contenders for the Miss Minnesota Basketball Award, so congratulations to them. Eastridge boys hockey will finish off their regular season today as they take on Mounds View at 7:30 at the Vadnais Heights Center. Then we'll head off into the sectional tournament next week. Eastridge girls hockey just finished their great season with an overall record of 16-9 after a devastating loss in the section championship, but congratulations on the great season for them. And miscellaneous, Eastridge Winter Week just finished up a couple weeks ago with our semi-formal dance at the Concord Exchange in South St. Paul. Eastridge Student Council will head off to the Capital Division Sprinter Convention at Farmington High School tomorrow to go and discuss new ideas and issues. Overall, it's been a good month for Eastridge, and we now look forward to March. So, does anybody have any questions for our students? No? All right. Well, thank you. All right. Agenda item 12.0, future meeting dates. 12.1, March 2nd, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. here at the District Service Center. And 12.2, March 16th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. here at the District Service Center. And the next item on the agenda is adjournment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Sharon Van Leer, seconded by Katie Schwartz. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, motion is approved, and we are adjourned. Thank you.